This is an audio recording of Abuelito Who by Sandra Cisneros. Before you read, Abuelito Who is a collection of memories of the poet's grandfather. Abuelito is Spanish for granddaddy. Abuelito Who by Sandra Cisneros. Abuelito who throws coins like rain and asks who loves him, who is dough and feathers, who is a watch and a glass of water, whose hair is made of fur, is too sad to come downstairs today, who tells me in Spanish, you are my diamond, who tells me in English, you are my sky, whose little eyes are string, can't come out to play, sleeps in his little room all night and day, who used to laugh like the letter K, is sick, is a doorknob tied to a sour stick, is tired, shut the door, doesn't live here anymore, is hiding underneath the bed, who talks to me inside my head, is blankets and spoons and big brown shoes, who snores up and down, up and down, up and down, again, is the rain on the roof that falls like coins, asking who loves him, who loves him, who? The Place Where Dreams Come From by Sandra Cisneros. Before you read, Cisneros grew up speaking both Spanish and English. She writes in English but often uses Spanish words in her writing. She says, I think that incorporating the Spanish for me allows me to create new expressions in English, to say things in English that have never been said before. In this essay, Cisneros talks about what inspired her to write Abuelito Who, which is the poem that we just read. The Place Where Dreams Come From by Sandra Cisneros. When I was little, my grandpa, my abuelito, that is, which is sort of like granddaddy, only sweeter. My abuelito used to love to give all his grandchildren their domingo, literally Sunday, because that's the day children receive it. That is their allowance. But my abuelito loved the ritual of asking in a loud voice, who loves grandpa? And we would answer, also in a loud voice, we do. Then he would take a handful of change he'd been saving all week for this purpose, Mexican coins which are thick and heavy, and toss them up in the air so that they'd fall like rain, like a piñata. And we'd scramble all over each other, picking up as many coins as we could. To me, it was much more fun to get our domingo this way instead of having it placed in our hands. Well, it's this fun, Grandpa, that this poem is about, and about the coins falling like rain, and rain falling like coins, that at times makes me think of him and miss him. I recall he became rather sick and cranky in his last years. I suppose that's what some of the images refer to. But I was grown and gone already, and my abuelito in faraway Mexico City. I'm not sure what exactly all the images refer to, and I'm not sure I ever knew. But that's what's so wonderful about poetry. It comes from some deep and true place inside you, the place where dreams come from. We don't always know what dreams mean, do we? And we don't have to always know to enjoy and experience them. That's how it is with poetry too. When I write, I don't question where my images are coming from. I write dictated by sound and directed by my heart. And these images, dough and feathers, little eyes are string, and doorknob tied to a sour stick, felt right then, and still feel right as I read them now. Dough and feathers, I suppose, has to do with how he felt when I held him and he held me. He was soft and squishy as dough or feathers. But it could also mean the color of his skin and hair, the texture of his skin, the silliness of his being. They're all right. Little eyes are string is harder to pinpoint. Did I mean like a spiral of string? Like when we are sick? Maybe. But then again, perhaps it's the way he looked at me when he was sick. And doorknob tied to a sour stick? I recall a cane he had and how he changed when he was very old and cranky and waved it when he wanted to make a point. So I suppose he had soured. Why tied to a doorknob? Who knows? A few biographical tidbits. My grandfather did laugh, like the letter K, a kind of k sound when he chuckled, which, surprisingly, I've inherited. And he was very proud that he could speak English, even though he lived in Mexico City most of his life. And so he liked to show off his English to his grandchildren from the United States when they came to visit. "You are my diamond," my grandpa would say in typical Mexican fashion. But then he would mistranslate, "You're my heaven," and instead come out with, "You're my sky," because sky and heaven are the same word in Spanish. I remember thinking, even as a child, that it sounded wonderful. "You're my sky." How much better than heaven? All of that. Imagine. I've always been much more partial to sky and clouds, and am even now. Finally, the older we grow, the younger we become as well. Don't you think? That is, our Abuelito had to take naps, and he liked to play games, like the one with the coins. And he talked to us in a way that other adults didn't. And he couldn't climb the stairs very well, like my baby brothers. So in a way, he was getting younger and younger and younger until he wasn't anymore.